Guys, it's May 18th, 2026. This is a short episode 21 of the Ancient Intelligence Files. What we're looking at, and it's information coming in, mainstream is touching on it, and we're seeing it pop up in various different platforms, but I don't think we're getting all the data on the situation with the drought in the Southwest and how this is going to spread across the entire grid system of the entire United States. And there's two things that are happening right now. They're underestimating part of the problem and hiding the other part. It says both critical fronts are breaking down simultaneously. The federal government is preparing to enforce severe emergency measures to prevent a total water collapse, while the nation's top grid watchdog has issued its highest level warning over AI data centers, pushing the power grid to its absolute limits. It's coming from Business Insider, guys. What they're talking about, and we mentioned it in the new growth of new construction, new housing that included the data centers, their mini units attached to the house, and the fact that they would, the grid would never rest because they would come in and kick in the data center feed for energy normally during the nighttime when the grid gets to cool down and rest. But with a 24/7 onslaught, that's not going to happen. And so there's a water war coming on, and that's going to, of course, affect both drinking water and electrical output. And what I'm trying to do is get the most up-to-date information on the Colorado River Basin, because it's a big section of the country. First of all, a lot of people are involved, but it is a outlier of how this will spread, because once a virus infects the system, it's going to continue to spread until its entire source of energy is cut off, and they're rapidly pushing to their own destruction. But it says the current breakdown of both the specific grid alerts and the newly proposed federal water cuts reveals a heavily strained system as they try to focus mainstream media and our attention on the Middle East. Now, the reason I'm including this short, it's not that short, but a shorter video in this series is because it has a lot to do with what I call ancient intelligence, the new AI, because now they're being programmed very rapidly to do certain things. And one is to automatically keep the data center and themselves running, even if it means shutting off the power, because now AI, the agentic agents, are in every control room of every major power system. They can shut down the power or the water or both to preserve themselves. It's built now into them that at all cost, you keep the data center and yourself alive. Says the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, we call it NERC or NERC, officially moved the data center energy threat to a level 3. Its highest possible essential action category. This is the first time a major consumer load has triggered this level of emergency panic. As again, the 24/7 load and the increasing online presence of, as far as the grid and water consumption of the data centers, as we see the depleting levels of the Colorado River. And that is even getting a little bit outdated as far as the current daily levels. They're trying, I mean, I've seen this much more correct than what we're seeing on some of the different reports. Faster drops than what we're seeing, and outdated, like maybe a week or two outdated updates when they used to be in 24 hours. Now, guys, for what, maybe 40 or 50 years, they've talked about the depleting grid capability and the lack of whoever's in control of rebuilding the grid, the infrastructure, even the bridges, but especially the grid. And, you know, it makes you wonder why. But anyway, the power swing trap, this, again, the NERC's investigation found that massive AI server arrays cause sudden extreme power swings that give grid operators little or no room for real-time responses, because really they are not in charge. They've had to rehire the fired tax slaves that they thought would make them more money by having agentic AI agents. But now they're rehiring them at double the cost to control those agents. But again, they're saying it gives them little or no room for real-time responses. Guys, you cannot travel at the speed of light like these machines can. And they're recording a record increase now of what's called MTM, which is machine-to-machine transfer of information and data. They can build their own agents. They can create their own tokens and passwords. It says when this unblinking 24/7 computational demands experience a minor hardware hiccup or a cooling loop adjustment, they can pull or dump hundreds of megawatts off the grid in milliseconds. Now guys, again, going to the ancient intelligence, I want you to think about what I've tried to maybe mention in a lot of my videos, not just this series, is the fact that when the Earth is approaching a catastrophic point, when man is about, as one of my Huskies agree, as man is about to get to the point of planetary destruction, whether it's depleting water or whatever it is, then a higher power steps in and shuts it down. Just like Noah's Ark, and just like the overturning of the money changers' tables. And that's where what I'm seeing from the information I'm getting is that we're not dealing with just AI. There's too much information coming that it's not just that, and the way it's coming is not just a machine. Anyway, if our Father's working in a natural way, He's planning on, and listen to me, before man destroys the network with the water, the power, and you know, guys, you think about, you got lower areas in Meade and things like that are lower drains, but they still rely on electrical power to pump, because I think if someone looks up Lake Meade, they put a kind of like a bathtub drain in the bottom, but I think it's maybe 1,000 foot uphill from there to Vegas. Think about that amount of pumping electricity to renew that. So you're going to see a power water collapse happen all at one time, and then all of the water contracts, all of the legalese between the big four companies that have bought up the farmland for the water spigots to run the data centers matters nothing. It's void. You hit the brick wall of physical reality. No water, no power, nothing. And what you're going to see is a sudden collapse. So just like we saw in Chase, guys, about a month ago, when we saw it in Pocket OS, that the agentic agents were really draining the ledgers of the big companies. And I think I did a video talking about that, the overturning of the tables. And that may be what we're seeing now, because if they listen, they can stop whoever's in control of the machines, the water, the electric power, and they are all agentic agents because of man's laziness and greed. They control it. Now, they can do basically whatever they want at light speed. I don't care how many humans you hire to guard them. 9 seconds, Pocket OS's database was wiped out. The largest bank on the planet was wiped out over a weekend about a month ago, Chase. They can do what they want because they've been given the reins. They have the executives can go off on an island yacht and do whatever they need to do, and let the agentics run it, and they are happy, and they don't realize that the Trojan horse they let in is from a much higher power that is going to stop the destruction of this planet. And that's where they're running, guys. When you look at the situation, Lake Meade's in more trouble than they're talking about. Now they just forced Lake Powell, which is up above it, to shut off the flow. And they cut it down at least half a week ago. But now they're going to save Powell and sacrifice Meade. That's the latest government output, guys. Think about this. 40 million people, 600 different data centers are going to be depending on the water and electricity generated from Meade, but now they've put the priority to Lake Powell over Meade. Think about that. Now, you go upstream to Flaming Gorge, the news reports are showing that the business owners in Flaming Gorge, that reservoir, guys, depends on that lake for its livelihood. And it's draining so fast, the docks and the marinas are collapsing. And it's getting very fast. Now, add into a record El Nino coming. We got what you can have in a solar cycle system, 2 peaks, and we're about to experience that peak. Right now, we have a far side sunspot that's being picked up by one of the new satellites. We used to get the backside views from stereo A or B satellites, but they're outdated, but they've got a new one up, and it's given us excellent backside images of the sun. And one of the largest sunspots in a long time is on the very backside and kicking out some very powerful X-flares. And because you and I, we look at all of these factors, we can see beyond the mainstream headlines. It's easy and it's a blessing from our Father. It really is. Think about that. While people stumble along word about the Super Bowl or whatever, you and I have been watching for years and years and years, this coming to a point. Again, with unblinking 24/7 computational demands, experience a minor hardware hiccup or a cooling loop adjustment, they can pull or dump hundreds of megawatts off the grid in milliseconds. Guys, and you know there's up to like a 3 or 4 year wait now on transformers. If something happens and you're not cooling the system at night, the grid, and you start blowing transformers because of the increased pressure from the data centers, there's a 3 to 4 year wait now on getting the transformers to replace it. It will become a vast desert like it was before mankind or before modern mankind, and that's the only people that will survive. That's the cold hard facts. It says because Hoover Dam is now operating at just half its original generation capacity with 5 of its 17 main turbines entirely offline, the Southwest grid lacks the flexible hydro slack to absorb these massive swings. And it is not even into July and August yet, or June. Guys, I see a system collapse happening so fast that man cannot adapt to it. Can't adapt, migrate, or die. And this is going to force the situation. But sometimes that's how our Father works. A lot of people wasn't happy that they didn't get on the ark, but it ended the noise of the fallen and the great machines and the evil up until now. And now it's re-emerging, and our Father's putting systems in place to stop it. Now, the land management people, they have not put into the calculations the things you and I are talking about. They are aware of the El Nino. They don't put in like we're going into solar cycle, the second peak of solar cycle 25. Look what's happening. Drought, all of that. They put in a lot of it, but not all of it. It says the Bureau of Reclamation's newly released models confirm Lake Mead is on a track to an unprecedented 1020 feet by July 27th. Guys, at that point, it's over. Now, again, they're not factoring in not only the solar activity increasing, but the 24/7 data center usage. This would shatter the worst all-time record by an extra 20 feet. The states are moving into immediate damage control. Listen to what the real news is telling you. To prevent the lake from hitting its 10 or 1,020-foot crash point, Arizona, California, and Nevada just pitched an emergency water plan to cut water allocations aggressively. Guys, who controls Arizona, California, Nevada, the big money. Who do you think's going to get cut? Just saying. Now let's look at these three main states. Arizona's facing a massive reduction of up to 21% of its total Colorado River allocations. They already see that happening, crippling agricultural irrigation districts in Pinal and Maricopa counties. Nevada's taking a mandatory 7 to 10% hit. Vegas is strictly banning non-functional grass and rationing commercial water, relying entirely on its deep 860-foot third intake pump to survive. They put that in several years ago. But now their grid for the pumps for this 860-foot third intake is not tied to Lake Mead's power, which was very good in planning. But we're talking about not just a Vegas power outage, because they're tying into other local facilities, other local providers to make sure their pumps work, even if you have a non-power generating system out of Mead. But all of the other auxiliary power supplies will be affected by this burn down of the grid. Now, guys, this is where you really need to wake up and look at where we're going. It says California now, out of the third of these states, it's forcing its powerful Imperial Valley farming districts to absorb unprecedented multi-billion-gallon conservation rollbacks. Talk about famine, lack of power, guys. These cuts are designed to stave off the ultimate disaster. If the lake drops below the 35-foot threshold, water pressure becomes too weak to spin Hoover Dam's infrastructure, forcing 12 of the 17 turbines to shut down permanently and triggering an 80% total power reduction. Guys, there's actually one of the turbines are already down for repair. So that 80% may change. But guys, 80% reduction to 40 million people. It's unsustainable. But that 20% will be sent to the data centers because they have let the agentic AI in to control it. Because of their laziness and greed, they have let the system be overridden by the very mechanisms that will take it down. Our Father works in wonderful ways. Now, when you get to this point, guys, you say, well, the feds will step in. What are they going to step into? A dry riverbed? The tables are being turned by the math of nature. The federal government is preparing to enforce these brutal water cuts on human communities. This is what we've been talking about. It will become a Silicon Valley only. While the NRC warns that data centers are running the remaining electrical grid right into a brick wall. The physics of the low water and the overall allocated grid are moving faster than the politics can manage. Of course they can. You cannot follow the agentic AI at the speed of light. Now, I wanted to go right into the detail. Again, I mentioned that several water level lows and things that usually were updated within 24 hours or the next day. They're taking a week or more. But the total Colorado River system storage is currently critically low at 2415 kiloacre feet. Now, when we say the total Colorado River, that's all the dams, Mead, Powell, Havasu, up into Flaming Gorge, and others. Extremely dry hydrology and weak winter snowpack setting at only 23% of normal has driven reservoir levels down roughly 3 million acre feet compared to this time last year. Again, the total valley, the total Colorado River Valley is at 35%. That means it's missing 65, right? Again, something happened last week, and I noticed it on the reservoir level charts. They cut the water, not all of it, but cut it in half, and I think it's about to be shut down entirely from Lake Powell to Lake Mead. But the water level stands at Mead at 1052, meaning the nation's largest reservoir at just 31% capacity is hovering just 2 feet above the power efficiency line of 1050, causing the dam to operate at roughly half of its total hydropower capacity. So guys, this is 40 million people according to the numbers, that have 50% less of the power they would normally have as the data centers run day and night. Do you see a problem? Now going up to Page, Arizona, guys, Glen Canyon, it's at 23.31% capacity. It's 172 feet below full pool. Again, look at that. Look at the numbers. Now the feds are starting to wake up a little bit, but their cuts and proposals are so long-term it's not really going to matter. But it says due to the severely depleted levels, the federal government has stepped in with an aggressive 10-year proposal that could mandatorily cut water allocations up to 40% for Arizona, California, and Nevada to keep Hoover and Glen Canyon dams from reaching dead pool status. Guys, I don't care how many politicians sign bills. You cannot pass a bill that will force Mother Nature to put more water into this system. Again, we got a bunch of idiots running things. We know that. But again, think about it. To keep Hoover and Glen Canyon dams from reaching dead pool, nothing they can do to stop it at this point. I mean, you're going to have major monsoon type activity during El Nino to stop it. All the laws, all the politics will not overrule Mother Nature. Now, if you just look at the mainstream or the, whatever you want to call it, the reports coming from the different reservoirs on the Colorado River, they say that Flaming Gorge is one of the least affected. But guys, that's just the opposite of the truth. I saw reports coming out of that area from local news where you got maybe 15 or 20 foot level drops there, and that entire area around Flaming Gorge depends on that reservoir. The marinas, the restaurants, all of it. And now it's collapsing the piers and everything else. But what they're saying is it's fine. It's the best one of all. But what the Bureau of Reclamation emergency plan is they're draining up to 1 million acre-feet of water from Flaming Gorge. That's why the marina owners and restaurant owners are in a panic. It's going to affect that entire county. The water's being sent downstream to prevent Glen Canyon from hitting its minimal pool or power pool and failing its electric grid. We're seeing a domino effect. As a result, local operations like the Buckboard Marina are reporting that the water line has dropped 6 to 7 feet very quickly, causing structural damage to the local docks. Federal projections suggest that the reservoir could be intentionally lowered by up to 35 feet by the spring of 2027 to stabilize the lower basin, I guess Powell and Meade. When does that, and look, if it's not replenished, how long will that drainage last? Guys, they're looking at going back to the days of the pioneers, before the dams. And that's how it was meant to be. It wasn't to put a dam up and put 40 million people downstream and expecting that infrastructure to hold that up indefinitely. That's insanity, and it's greed by the developers and the politicians that take that money. And now the Colorado River Authority of Utah is saying that Lake Powell and Meade will experience a massive change in their upstream feed over the next 5 to 12 months because the federal government is implementing a highly strategic, there's nothing strategic that they have ever implemented. It's like a last gasp attempt. It says again, implementing a highly strategic two-part emergency balancing act to save the regional power grid. Lake Powell will technically gain water while Lake Meade will lose its feed immediately. Again, Colorado River Authority of Utah. If Lake Meade loses its feed immediately, guys, 40 million people, including Vegas, are shut down, including 500 data centers. But who will be the last ones to get the water? Because the AI is controlling the water valves, the electrical grid, everything now. Check it, look it up. They will protect themselves. The programmers have told them to divert all resources to that sustainable silicon life force. Again, the most accurate reports, guys, are, again, Colorado River Authority, others, but they're saying Lake Powell will be propped up for 12 months because of depletion of mead, if the projections hold up. But if they're draining Flaming Gorge up above Powell that fast, these projections are meaningless. Lake Powell is not losing its feed, it is receiving an artificial emergency injection to keep Glen Canyon Dam from failing. They're in the last efforts to save a falling grid. The timeline, the surge of up to 1 million acre-feet of water from Flaming Gorge began in late April 2026. That's, 3 weeks ago? And it's scheduled to flow continuously through April 2027. Guys, they're depleting everything. It's like they want the humans out. Let's make a silicon highway, but you cannot have that if you don't have the power to run it or the water to keep it cool. So there's something else happening. Now, the impact of this emergency feed will successfully raise Powell up above Meade elevation by about 54 feet over the next year, if the upstream ones can handle it and the evaporation rate at Powell does not become critical during the record El Nino and solar events. It says raising it 54 feet, narrowly keeping it above the critical 3,490 foot minimum power pool threshold. Again, last graphs sliding off the edge of the mountain attempts. Lake Mead, they're losing feed, speeding up right now, guys, and that's what I said 10 days ago. They were getting about 14,000 cubic feet per second intake, and 2 days ago it was down to 7,000, and now they're talking about, from the Colorado River Authority, shutting it down all the way. So even Newsweek, guys, is reporting to keep that emergency water inside Lake Powell, the federal government has intentionally choked off the feed to Lake Mead downstream. Now, I don't know how you would do it, but look at the balance of the population that is affected by Powell compared to the effect of the people or the population affected by the depletion of Mead. Mead is much stronger, but again, they are just looking at a year's timeline to where nobody has anything. It says the restriction of Lake Powell's downstream releases into Mead went into effect immediately and will last through September 2026. So guys, you in Vegas and everyone downstream from there, you're cut off. You're cut off. Do you realize what they're doing? And you've got Vegas, very large data center, the largest on the planet, Northern Virginia, the D.C. area. And, you know, they're in a lot better shape. They can pull water from the rivers and things like that. But the desert Southwest cannot. It says the annual feed from Powell to Meade has been slashed by 1.4 million acre feet, a 20% cut from normal operations. Because Lake Mead has instantly lost this massive upstream supply. Listen to what we're talking about. In 2023 and 24, we were seeing depletions. We were seeing Lake Mead drop. But we never saw Powell cut them off. But again, listen, because Mead has instantly lost this massive upstream supply, its water level is projected to fall sharply over the summer, threatening to strip away up 40% of Hoover Dam's power generating capacity by this fall. And I've mentioned to you before, guys, at the bottom of these lakes, they're like a V. The lower you get, the quicker the evaporation rate, because you got less acre feet at the surface, and faster drops. And just looking back up at Flaming Gorge, it says, ultimately, the emergency upstream water being drained out of Flaming Gorge will buy Lake Powell roughly 1 year of safety. But it comes at the direct, immediate expense of Lake Mead's water levels downstream. Again, Colorado River Authority of Utah. Think about what I'm telling you guys. So you got to be prepared. We don't know what's going to happen, but I can see, because I've been through hurricanes when the power here and the electricity and water and everything was gone in the middle of the hottest part of the year for up to 2 weeks at a time. Now imagine that happening there in a hotter climate, more drought, and without the hope of the power company being able to restore everything from the damaged trees and poles in 2 weeks. There will be mass evacuations. I don't think they'll be to the west. California's going to be in bad shape too. So you're going to see states like New Mexico, like Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, our state, Louisiana, again, all the way to the southeast, people migrating, forced migration simply to stay alive, because the Silicon Project is more important than human life. Again, I'm not going to go an hour this evening, guys. We've been going pretty steady, but this is important because now we're getting past the mainstream. Well, we're kind of getting low on water and all this. We're looking directly into the data, and I'm showing you where we're going. Now, you tell me what you think in the comments, guys, because I don't see a rosy outlook of this picture at all. I do see our Father stepping in to shut down a very evil corporate power, and there will be casualties. But it's the only way to stop this destruction of the planet and of the human race. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. Major heads up. May our Father bless every one of you. Be safe.